Hi guys, my name is Robert Rosales and I'm joined here with Jason Berlin of REPanther.com, the real estate panther. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robert.
And today he's going to give us a little bit of his background and about who he is. And, let me tell you a little bit about Jason Berlin. He works in San Diego in the real estate acquisition field. And he's acquired over 100 homes in less than 2.5 years and contributed to over $4 million in profit in that same time span. So he's going to share a little bit about what makes him so good at his job and sort of some of the skills that you can take home and put into practice immediately. So let's start with one of the first things here is you talked about earlier with me was you said that everyone knows to execute. That's sort of the thing they sort of know in their head, but they rarely follow through with. So what's going on there?
Yeah, there's a lot of these concepts I'll even be talking about that you may know of, but the problem is you may not actually believe it or actually execute it in practice. So it's important to at least remind yourself consistently of some of these principles or other principles you learn that are important in life, and just really focus on actually executing.
Okay, so why do you think most people don't execute? What's going on there, man? What's stopping them? They know they should be doing something, whether it's working out, whether it's hitting those sales calls, but why don't they execute? What makes the difference between someone like you and somebody who's really slacking behind?
That could be a really long conversation, but basically, you just have to do it. You just have to commit to doing it, just like going to the gym. You just have to go.
Okay.
And it's the same kind of principle in sales. You have to go. Just keep going.
Okay, then let's get into a little bit of background there. You sort of said something that I thought was really interesting, which was you said unlike everyone else that has a huge ego when they get into things, you sort of treat yourself like a 2-year-old. So what's up with that? That sounds a little bit condescending to most people who would just read that on paper or just listen to it. Why do you treat yourself like a 2-year-old when it comes to your job?
It is, and it can be condescending, and I don't know if everyone can necessarily do the same that I do. I think they can, but basically, just looking back at your life or anything really, there's just so many missed opportunities, and I like to treat myself like a 2-year-old, give myself very simple instructions, and just kind of turn my brain off and just execute. And not overthink things or overanalyze things, or just set simple things for you to do and just execute. And when you treat yourself like a 2-year-old and don't expect yourself to actually do the things you're supposed to do, but just do simple things, then it actually ends up working really well.
Awesome. And so another thing you mentioned that really has contributed to your success was your time management ability, your ability to prioritize and do a bunch of these tasks. So why don't you talk to us about that? Like, what makes you an effective person when it comes to time management?
I really connected with Brian Tracy's time management.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually free on YouTube. It's like 4 hours or so. And I've listened to it over 10 times and probably should actually listen to it again because it's really that good. What he says in there is just really, really powerful. And if you actually execute the ideas in that, you can be very successful with time management. And time management is really, really important. Anyone who's successful in life has good time management. I really recommend it.
Okay, great. And so I've also listened to that audiobook, and he also talks about having a good system to prioritize your tasks or just things you have to do throughout the day. So in your case, what sort of system or time management tools do you use to keep yourself on track?
I basically just figure out everything that I could do that day, and then I prioritize the most important things and make sure to do those first. And in that time management by Brian Tracy, I think it's important to listen to that during times where you're like driving in the car or in an airplane, things like that, where literally there's nothing better to do, in my opinion, in those sort of situations than doing that, or maybe having a conversation with whoever or building relationships. But other than that,
So it's sort of like that that quote. I forget who said it, but they said that motivation doesn't last. But the guy retorted by saying, "Neither does bathing, but that's why you do it every day."
exactly.
So that's pretty good stuff there. Okay, and another thing that really caught my attention when we were talking earlier, which was what you said about analyzing your battles and figuring out what's worth your time when it comes to people or just even business transactions and opportunities that come up. What's your mindset going into that?
A lot of people don't think about each interaction as, I guess, an opportunity, and they tend to spend too much time on non-worthwhile opportunities. For example, they may do a 30-minute sales presentation and they don't even know if that person could afford what they're selling them, or you just need to screen before talking to someone.
So in your case, what goes into that? A lot more research. What is the trick for you to kind of funnel that correctly?
Well, in my field, a lot of real estate agents, they don't get that many listings. So it's actually not that good of an idea to form really strong relationships with real estate agents, in my case, because a lot of them get maybe a listing once every 2 years, 3 years. So if you're building these really long-term relationships with people and spending so much time on any one person, it could really, you could be really not making as much money, as opposed to having not as deep relationships with people, but having a lot more people you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of figure out and strategize based on your field or where your goals are. For example, in commercial real estate, some of these relationships I think are a little deeper, and it's better to have strong relationships with fewer people. But it really depends, I think, on what you're trying to do. But I feel like a lot of sales is people spend way too much time on too little relationships instead of doing the other way. But you don't want to get too spread out where you're just blast emailing people. They have no idea who you are, and you
become that douchey sales guy that just which works in some cases, but I think in just depending on your field.
Yeah.
All right, that's some solid advice. Okay, and let's keep going on that track and on something else that really caught my attention, which was what you said that you kind of made an analogy, which was, one of the things that contributed to to your success was that you likened this to being in a forest and cutting things down with a knife. You said that you can actually cut down more trees with a duller knife if you spend more time versus somebody who has a sharper knife but just doesn't hammer through it as hard. Can you go and explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I really like using analogies. I think it's a really good way to explain things. And I see sales as you're a person running around a forest trying to cut down trees or things. Anything you can, really. And how good you are at sales is kind of like your knife. And there could be a horrible salesman that has a butter knife, for example, but he's just consistently out there so long, and he could actually outperform someone who has a sharper knife but maybe feels entitled, doesn't spend as much time working hard, and the butter knife could outperform. But also, I think it's really important to spend 80% of your time in the forest trying to cut down things, and 20% of the time sharpening your knife. So that's kind of my mindset on sales.
Okay, cool. Then why don't you give us a real life example? And I know you talked to me about this just through conversations, but when you were kind of getting into this, how you sort of decided that you were just going to go all in, and you really just dedicated your whole life to the whole real estate world. So is that kind of something that's similar to this case, where you kind of shut down in a maybe a little bit unhealthy way, every single aspect of your life other than work and exercise. So is that something that you think is a real good example for that analogy, or is that kind of stretching it?
I think that's a good thing to talk about. I don't think that is necessarily going off of that analogy, but yeah, if you want to be successful in something, it can be very helpful to cut other things out of your life and just really focus on what you want to be successful at, and that will help you be successful quicker. It can be unhealthy and not necessarily good over a long period of time, but that's what really pushed me. I actually think it's really important to go through a period of your life to just get really good at something, and it really changes you as a person, because then you understand in any other thing you want to accomplish what it takes to actually be the best. And I tend to respect people that do that, and I just like being around people that are really successful in something.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, great. So let's go move on to the next topic, which is about dealing with disappointment and knowing to expect it to a certain extent. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think this is a really big weakness of a lot of people. It's just human weakness. But a lot of people are not good at dealing with disappointments, and they just dwell on it. One of the big things that I think that makes me successful or more successful than others is that I'm very, very quick at moving on from disappointments. I expect there to be disappointments consistently, and that's very rational, and that's going to happen to everyone. But my mindset is just to have so much going on for me that any one disappointment doesn't really affect me. Mm-hmm. And kind of some people, I think, perceive me as a little inhuman for that, but they just don't really understand that that's what I'm actually thinking.
Yeah, it's sort of a they sort of commit too much emotion to one sort of outcome.
Yeah, and then just they want to vent on someone about it, and that time is not actually doing anything. You could be spending your time pursuing something new. It's not good. It's good to vent sometimes, but people vent way too much.
So would you say that the disappointment fuels your next kind of move? So is it kind of a motivating factor when you fail enough that you're like...
I turn everything into a positive. I mean, when I get rejected, I push myself to just go harder and be successful in something else. When I see success, I push myself to get more, and I use everything I can to motivate me to what I know I want to do. When I'm afraid also of being successful and becoming complacent, so I use that fear to keep pushing myself to keep working every day.
Great. So now that we're on the negative subject, or positive, if you want to spin it.
It's all positive.
Disappointment. Let's talk about failure, man. Let's talk about what you said, which was taking responsibility for your failure and then knowing how to turn that into something positive again. So why don't we just dive into that?
Yeah, it's really important. I think it's a human tendency to want to blame others, and it's really not a good mindset. I like to take responsibility for all my failures, even if it actually was someone else's fault, or just know that there'll be times where other people will, maybe you did everything right and someone else did something wrong and it led to your failure, but you need to just take responsibility for all of your failures. And at the same time, I think it's good not to think that you were the one that played all of the part in the success. Really just leave your pride on the table and give other people the pride of success and the glory, and just leave yourself out of it. And I think people will like you more, and It's just a better mindset.
Is that something that keeps you a little bit hungrier?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of your biggest failures, and then how you've kind of flipped that into something more positive? Like, give us a specific example where you've gone through something where that I'm sure people can relate to when listening to this.
I have a lot. I mean,
give us the good ones. Give us the nasty ones that we can learn from.
Well, just actually today, this guy, I had a couple transactions that didn't go well, and the agent got really emotional and has a big grudge against me. What happened was we had a property that we were supposed to go inspect, and we were supposed to go see a property at Wednesday at 12 p.m., and this was like a year ago, and I never said we were officially going to go, and he just assumed we were going to go. I did not go. He got pissed off that that I didn't go. He was assuming that I had agreed that our team would show up, but I never said that, so there's just miscommunication. And then the price seemed a little bit too high, and we just got in this transaction, and he just got really emotional and told his whole office about me and spread all this gossip. And one of his broker is on my email list of people to email to follow up with. And he basically said that there's been a lot of bad things happening in his office with me, which is complete bullshit, but whatever. I need to keep my pride off the table. And I was basically trying to tell him to explain himself on which properties he was talking about. And he wouldn't really explain himself, and then he left me a message, and he basically said, "Stop contacting me," and he said the F word in the message. And it hurt, but I just I decided to just stop contacting him. I didn't think it was accomplishing anything, and I just kept moving on. And
so in his case, it seems like it might have been something where you talked about earlier, which was having a lot more going on. So he might have been relying on you as his one source of maybe a sale going on or whatever it was.
Well, there's human emotions involved all the time, and people can hold grudges. It's hard to change people's opinions. You just got to keep going, and you're gonna find rapport with people naturally. Just some people it's really easy to have rapport with them. Other people not. You know, you can get in situations all the time where it's expected to not be perfect and things to go wrong, and some people will hold grudges for long periods of time, potentially a whole life. I try not to hold grudges, but I just know people do, so.
Great. So it's actually been really insightful. Thank you for all the nuggets of success information that we got from this. So tell us about RE Panther and what people need to know about you and what you do and what they can actually get from your website.
Well, backing up too, try to listen to this and, execute this in real life. I know I talked a lot about these different things, but really try to execute. That's what it's all about. My goal is to teach people in real estate acquisitions of mostly probably flip properties to get more properties at lower prices, and a lot of this is mindset and strategies.
And there you sort of break down some of the common mistakes that people make, how they can improve on it, and you can really just coach them in that regard, right?
Yeah. Really focus on just results, just getting people better. That's my main thing. Not even really sales, just getting people better. I don't need to hype myself up or anything. Just get people better. That's all I'm focusing on.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Again, this is Jason Berlin from repanther.com. Be sure to subscribe to his newsletter if you want some of the best nuggets of information when it comes to real estate acquisition, success, and other sales training tips. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thanks, Robert.
You're welcome.